All right, let's get started. So, yeah, hope that was an interesting read. And I thought since Anuraj and I went, we could start with very quick personal impressions and reactions from our trips. So, Anuraj, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Uh, yeah, so I actually did not know anything about this event, and before Venkat mentioned it to me, so I was initially planning to attend this ETHCC's event. There was one in East Paris, so like I didn't even know this Devconnect, and then Venkat mentioned it, and then I looked, and it was going to be held in Istanbul, and so basically like I decided I think around a month ago to go there and yeah, so basically I've been researching like how to run small nodes on Raspberry Pis for the Yakrover project. And when I started exploring it, the light clients would not sync it, and then I decided to run the full node, and the full node requirements. I bought a 1 TB hard disk, and then that was also not enough. So I thought like I would attend the so there was I think a workshop for client. So my plan was basically to attend the light client workshop, and then the rest of the time I was planning to hack something with the ESP32s. So ESP32s are basically small microcontrollers, and they are basically even smaller than what the Raspberry Pis are. So they have like memories in a few hundred kilobytes, and then my plan was basically to do something with that. And so I got something basic. Transaction checking working on the ESP32s like in a day or two, and then I was just randomly attending various workshops here and there, and then I got into this autonomous worlds event in which Venkat was giving a talk. And yeah, so basically like I had a blast of information in front of me, and then I was just trying to getting to know the keywords which they were speaking. But yeah, like really great experience. Like I'm glad that I attended it, and so basically you get an intro to a lot of stuff, but there is so much happening there. It's basically difficult to like know what is happening everywhere. So I just randomly picked here and workshops here and there, and then try to grab something which could be useful to me. And yeah, some of the talks was really interesting. I think one of the talks was from Josh Stark. Yeah, so basically tries to define institutions, blockchains with some definition of hardness. So I think that talk was really good, and I got a lot from that. Uh, and then there was the I also attended this censorship uh, talk, which again Venkat was giving a talk there. And yeah, so there was some talk about light clients there too. So that was the most interesting thing for me there. And yeah, one of the things I noticed there that I was the only one hacking hardware there, and then the rest of the people there were mostly like front end developers, back end developers, and like the people I interacted with some people, and they were like looking at me as if I'm working with some alien technology or something. Like nobody, so most of the people there work with such a higher level of abstraction, and like I couldn't find anybody who was working at such a low level. Maybe there were some hardware wallet people, but they were not basically like trying to implement something like Ethereum applications on the lowest levels of bare metal microcontroller itself. So like yeah, so I think I was the only one hacking around with the lowest like really small microcontrollers. So and yeah, one thing I noticed that like a lot of people were talking about bringing the next 1 billion people and on chain, but nobody was even thinking about like how to onboard like next 50 billion things to the chain itself. So nobody was like even was thinking about it. I don't know if it's even feasible, but like that was like kind of an impression I had. uh yeah, so yeah, that was what I had to say. uh Maybe Venkat can add more.
Yeah, I can go next. I think I had more context going into this because I've been working with the Ethereum Foundation for a year and I've learned a lot more. And also, this is the third Ethereum event I've attended in the last year. So there was DevCon in Bogota last year, and I think I did a trip report after coming back from that. Then I went to ETH Denver, which is another big event, kind of like ETHCC in Paris, which Anuraj was thinking of going to, and then this one. And from what I hear from people who are much deeper in the ecosystem, the ETH Denver and ETH CC type events are the largest and most sort of like party events. So they're for like people in the overall crypto ecosystem, including people who are just having fun and games, trying to make money. So it's like the largest fish market type events. And the ETH Denver I went to is an example of that, and I think I enjoyed it least. Because it also includes like people trying to run DAOs for various things. So it's like it includes all the non-technical stuff as well. DevCon is the large developer conference, and that one I think has like a more I don't know top-down structured large technology conference type feel, and I kind of enjoyed it. I did one talk there, and I think I learned a lot there last year. Including that was where I first learned about zero knowledge proofs, which I think we've done a couple of sessions on in between. That was just sort of making its debut last year in Bogota. And Devconnect is apparently the smallest and most like small scale, intimate workshop scale stuff event in the Ethereum ecosystem. So even though the overall event is very large, this occupied like a large building in Istanbul with like 5 levels, and I think it filled maybe a third to half of it. Uh, the actual activity is spread across like dozens of independently organized tracks. So it's not a single conference. DevCon is more of like a single conference, even though they're like sub conferences. Whereas DevConnect is more like there's like a Ethereum Foundation kind of like helps coordinate setting up like a large space where everything can happen. But within that, it all becomes kind of like a pop-up city. So whoever wants to organize something organizes it and kind of like figures out how to be in the area. So most things happened in this one large building, but some things happened around it as well. And I would say it's like DevConnect to me felt much more like an iceberg. Like DevCon, most of it is like visible and on the agenda and happening in the rooms. DevConnect is much more like I would say the visible agenda is like 10 to 20%. Then you have kind of like a gray agenda where it's not that it's secret, but it's like if you don't know about it, you don't know about it kind of vibe to it. So that's, I would say, another 60%. And then I would say about 20% is like backroom, invite only, kind of like effectively secret things happening. So because I'm sort of like connected to the Ethereum Foundation people via various projects, I did get invited to like a couple of the, I would say like backroom stuff as well. So yeah, like Anuraj mentioned, I did 2 talks, one at this Autonomous Worlds conference, which was very interesting because it took the, I think we've talked about the Dark Forest game, that's the on-chain fully decentralized kind of like space domination type game. So the technology behind that game, which was very popular last year, they've kind of generalized it into a stack of capabilities for building many things like this. So of course, gaming worlds is one obvious application, but basically you can build entire what they call autonomous worlds. So one example that the one of the founders of ZeroX, to back up, this zero knowledge proofs technology is being mainly pushed by this organization called 0x Spark. So it's like a play on Xerox Spark, but it's spelled with the 0x as in like the hexadecimal string starter. So 0x Spark is really pushing the zero knowledge proof stuff. They're the ones behind Dark Forest. They're the ones behind Autonomous Worlds. And interestingly, a lot of people didn't know that. They attended all these events, but 0x Spark is an org that kind of tries to stay stealthy and shadowy. I think of it like, Asimov's second foundation. Anyway, yeah, I was talking to one of the founders of that, Justin Gilbert, and he has this vision of, can you actually do like the equivalent of network state type things using autonomous world technology. So basically, if you have a bunch of people who have like shared values and want to live the same lifestyle virtually, can they coordinate and create like an entire world to inhabit on the autonomous world stack? So that includes like, of course, things like, maybe having a token currency for their economics, but also like, an entire online on-chain game that's fully decentralized like Dark Forest, except maybe for more real things. So that was interesting. That was 2 days of that. And actually, just before that, the ZeroX Park people had an invite-only event called, what was it called? Draft, which was a one-day event on the future of Ethereum. That was also interesting. I didn't speak at that, but I got to attend it. So that had lots of like 5-10 year roadmap type talks by a lot of people. And there was another event they put up called Prog Crypto. So Prog Crypto stands for Programmable Cryptography. And what the ZeroX Park people believe, and I kind of sort of like buy their storyline, is that zero knowledge proofs are a foundation with which you can basically create programmable cryptography, where you can do things like make arbitrary assertions about things and use them as part of like contracts and things like that. So it's a very powerful technology where until now the world is only familiar with like static hard-coded cryptography in a sense, like you have private keys and so forth. Programmable cryptography is you can basically program levels of secrecy and access and permissions into just about any product idea you can make up. So ZeroX Park's vision, I think, is to create like a whole almost alternate internet that's based on programmable cryptography. So there was a 2-day event on that was extremely developer focused. And one of my old friends, Jason Morton, has a startup in the space where he's doing like machine learning plus zero knowledge proofs together. And he spoke at that. I didn't understand anything he said, but yeah, that was another event I dropped in on a little bit. So this was a spectrum of events kind of like run by ZeroX Park, and that's kind of revealing because they've become very influential in the ecosystem, and they're driving a lot of like interesting agendas in Ethereum, I think. Uh, the other event Anuraj mentioned, which I spoke at, censorship.wtf, that was co-sponsored or co-organized by this other ecosystem player called Flashbots. Flashbots is kind of a provider of infrastructure technology that's mainly designed to like counteract toxic MEV stuff going on. So like when the minor extractable value games get to be too toxic, how do you like counter that? So Flashbots started out with technology for that, but now they seem to be expanding into like a larger range of interests. So that was kind of interesting, that track of talks. What else was going on? There was, the article mentions ZooPass. So ZooPass was created by ZeroX Park, and the name Zoo is kind of due to the relationship to an event that happened just before Devconnect called, what is it called? ZooConnect. So ZooConnect is was put on by the same people who put on Zoozalu. So Zoozalu and ZooConnect are both kind of like pop-up city communal sort of like cultural things that happen. So Zoozalu was earlier in the year, and that's a whole month long, and it'll be again next year. I met with the founder of that. She lives in Austin, so Sachin, you may come across her, and she also did a talk at the Summer of Protocols. But yeah, that's another interesting entity to track, because I think they are. So Zoozalu is trying to create, I guess, the social and community layer of the Ethereum crypto ecosystem. It's like people describe it as kind of like the Burning Man of Ethereum, at least, if not crypto. And the interesting thing is they try to create like interesting environments for technology to happen. And the ZeroX Park people have been heavily involved in the Zoozalu events as well, so they have a big presence there. And ZooPass first came out as a sort of ticketing infrastructure for Zoozalu, and it the screenshot I posted is like a frog finding trading card game that's part of the app. But the main function of the app is to like issue tickets. So many of the Devconnect events issued their tickets as QR codes through the ZooPass app. And it doesn't look like much when you use it. It's just like you get an email, you click on it, and then the ticket shows up in your account, and it's a QR code, and they scan it and give you like a wristband to attend the event. But beneath the hood, really interesting things are going on where they have this idea called proof carrying data. So it's basically kind of like an NFT, except it's entirely defined by its data, and it runs on zero knowledge proofs, and it lives on your phone. So it's like NFTs without a blockchain. It's kind of like free floating blobs of secure private data that you can prove you have without actually revealing it. So that's the zero knowledge connection. So the frog game, I think, is partly just to get people used to zero knowledge technology and also build a foundation for other people to like experiment more with it. But basically, you can do things like, for example, I've been playing the game for like a week and I've collected maybe 70 frogs. And if some event says that you can only attend this event if you have either a green frog or a red frog or a blue frog, I can send them probably a proof saying something like, I have one of those three frogs, but I'm not going to tell you which. So that's kind of like how zero knowledge stuff can be used. So it's really powerful, and I think very interesting things are going to happen with ZooPass. Let's see what else. So these are all kind of like the parts I was personally paying attention to, but there's also a lot of other stuff going on. Like the article mentions, a lot of the discussion was around EIP 4337, which is the account abstraction EIP. And the basic idea is to use crypto now, you basically need to self-custody key pairs, which is extremely risky. You lose your key pair or your hardware wallet and you're screwed. There's no account recovery, there's no password recovery, right? So account abstraction is basically infrastructure that creates accounts on the blockchain that allow you to do like more familiar social recovery patterns. So you can like maybe appoint somebody else as your friend, and if you lose your key, they can help you recover it. So that kind of thing, like giving your neighbor your keys type patterns. So that was a big level of discussion. Another huge topic was staking. So after the merge, Ethereum allows staking and you can earn money, but the interest is not free. It comes from risking your Ethereum to help secure the network, right? So, and that's kind of obvious if you like think for even 5 minutes about it. But one of the interesting things that's going on is staking has become kind of a new scam surface. So you've got all these shit coins and random like projects that promise you like high staking rewards, and the staking doesn't do anything. It doesn't work to like do proof of stake based security for any network. It's just like you're getting an interest, and where is that interest coming from? It's a Ponzi scheme. It's like literally an incentive to make you hold your coins longer. So yeah, if you hold your coins, you get interest, which obviously is a Ponzi scheme because they're like paying from like a larger pie chart. So this activity is starting to crop up more, and that's, I think, causing a lot of concern. But in general, staking was a big topic of conversation because lots of interesting things are happening. Like, for example, if you, I think the staking block is 32 ETH to participate in staking, but you can also share with other people and stake. And there's these things called liquid staking derivatives where you can put your Ethereum into a pool that does the staking, but your own Ethereum is kind of liquid and you can pull it out. So there's like some interest rate arbitrage involved there, of course. So lots of interesting activity going around staking. So I would say staking and account abstraction are the two like hardcore things that people are doing a lot of effort on. And on the R&D front for the sort of future of the roadmap, I attended a couple of sort of like working group type meetings. One of them was very interesting. It was about the future of like builder proposer. So this is on the blockchain Ethereum roadmap, but blocks will be built through this builder-proposer separation model where some people will propose blocks and other people will build it, and there's like whole schemes of making sure it works honestly. So there's a day-long meeting on how do you actually architect that to be like game theoretically secure and so forth. So that's going to be a big, I think, topic of conversation in the consensus layer roadmap for the next few years while it gets built out. I think, yeah, that's my summary of things. Sorry, that was a lot. I was wandering around a lot and picking up on a lot of stuff. But yeah, the stuff, one of the interesting things is since I've attended 3 events, the logic of the ecosystem's evolution is now clear because there's threads of continuity through all these events. And I heard from several people that this is how work actually gets done in the Ethereum ecosystem. Like literally all the teams are distributed, all the startups are distributed, and they keep coming to all these events almost like a moving party or a movable feast metaphor I heard some people use. And they get a lot of work done in the week or so here. And it's kind of an interesting lifestyle. Like my friend Jason, who runs the EasyKL startup, he was talking about like his team is like, I don't know, maybe a dozen people or something now, quite a lot. But yeah, they apparently go to all these events and get a lot of work done at these events. And of course, it is not, there's problems with that lifestyle. If you have families and stuff, you have to like keep traveling to get your work done. But it's kind of an interesting model. Like literally, it's a real example of network state type models, which by the way was a big topic of conversation. So I wouldn't say Balaji's particular vision of network state is gaining traction so much as he put a name to a particular sort of like tendency in the ecosystem to organize and work in certain ways. And he has like a recipe or formula for trying to do that on a larger scale. I don't know if that particular formula will work. I personally kind of have a lot of issues with his framework, but the underlying dynamics that he's sort of like sensing and like trying to theorize and turn into recipes, that's really real. Like the entire Ethereum ecosystem works that way. It's basically, I wouldn't call them network states, but more like, I don't know, network cities maybe that go to these pop-up city type things and get stuff done. Anyway, I'll stop there. That was a longish report. So 15 minutes. The rest of you, let's see, maybe we can go in order now that Anuraj and I have spoken. So going back around, yeah. Anant, you want to take it? Any thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I was able to catch a couple of your talks, Venkatesh. I thought that was great. I mean, I guess the main point about loyalty being sort of missing in the conversations of exit and voice, I thought that was interesting. And East Denver was my first sort of Ethereum event, and I really wanted to be at Devconnect, but due to other things, I couldn't be there. But I was glad they were able to stream a lot of these things. And reading this article and hearing what you and Anuraj just shared, it seems that you can sort of like get 40-50% of what's happening there by just catching up with the live streams and reading articles, but you still miss a good percentage of other activities and other interesting talks that you might get serendipitous access to by just being there. But I think that's something that I hope maybe with more technology evolution, maybe this can be figured out on how to involve more people that couldn't get there for a variety of reasons. But yeah, it's very interesting to see the Ethereum ecosystem moving at a fast pace in so many different dimensions in one go. I thought the whole account abstraction conversation was interesting, and from ETH Denver, for example, one of the things I found about the sort of near protocol was they started with just having the smart contract wallets is just their way of calling account abstractions, and I thought that was very interesting and sort of very from an engineering standpoint. I thought that was quite ingenious from them, and it's interesting to see a similar kind of development happening in the Ethereum ecosystem, but of course with like very emergent sort of decentralized sort of teams working on those problems. But yeah, the Zupas, the frog crypto, that seems quite interesting. I tried to there was some way to get involved and try to play with it and to get a sense for it online. I tried to do it, but it seems it was quite created for people who were actually there. That was also interesting. I'll stop and pass it to Ben.
Yeah, it's interesting so I've never actually been to one of these Ethereum conferences. So despite, being involved in the space for some time, I don't travel much. But it's always I find these sort of recaps of them very interesting, especially since Venkat is frankly incredibly good at giving like high level overviews of what happened. Because I could watch the talks, and I've watched a couple of them, and I could like read the article, and I mean I can understand the technicalities of what they're trying to do, but without being there, I can't feel the social layer. So this sort of social layer recap is very useful to me. And it's interesting to see how the Ethereum space is evolving and what sort of paths they're stumbling down and what kind of trade-offs they're making. And I mean, I don't want to, start just shilling my own philosophy immensely right now. We don't have the time for that. But it is good to like see this stuff and be like, hey, I was thinking of something like that, but they're taking it in a different direction, which is good because it means that maybe I can go off and do my own thing and be right, or maybe that guy will be wrong and I can just take their solution and when the time comes, which is always great. Yeah, I just really enjoy these sort of explanations and sort of overviews of what happened. I'm not sure if I have much to add myself. I could go over any of the technical details if someone has questions or whatever. Maybe I can explain something that you didn't understand. But then again, I'm not an expert in the Ethereum space, so you might want to go ask someone of them. Anyway, I'll move it on to Grigori, I think.
This time I don't have anything to add, but I have a question to ask. In our government paper, actually the Grand Bazaar was one of the inspiration, and it is in Istanbul. So did you have a chance to visit the Grand Bazaar? Yeah, you can answer it later on. I can pass it on to Jennifer.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Like Ben said, the being able to have a way into the legit part of this space just feels hugely valuable. So thank you to Anuraj and Venkat for this and the rest of the stuff we've done around this. The one thing I'll share is, I think somebody on Farcaster mentioned it, so I've read it. The Daniel Suarez novel that came out in January called Critical Mass. And because at my level, I'm never going to understand all the coding stuff, but being able to have my own intuition primed for why this stuff matters feels like, yeah, that's the level I can participate in. And so in the novel, there's like, it's a space opera, but the people out in space need a new economy. And so it's a DAO and they're using cryptocurrency, and they launched their own coin. So Daniel Suarez has ripped this right out of the headlines. And in the middle of this huge crypto bear time, to be reminded about why this stuff matters felt pretty fun, pretty useful to me. The other thing I'd love to know, and it's probably not time, but Venkat and Anuraj, how did it actually feel to be there in what is a modern surveillance state? And so in some ways, of course, it was nice that the piece covered some of this, but the government's really good at surveillance, and they've got this retro, Muslim thing going on, while still being very modern. So how did it feel to walk around is one of the things I'd be, if we have time. Passing to my friend Nathan.
I'm actually kind of curious about Jenna's question as well. One of the there's definitely a contradiction there that the article highlighted, and one of the things I've thought for a while is the fact that turns out things on chain are pretty traceable, and a lot of that dream of privacy or anonymity or even pseudonymity is very illusionary. ZK proofs, there's an interesting place where that might bring some of that back. So I think that's kind of interesting. Like, I think my main takes on the article is, the account abstraction is very cool. I have mixed feelings about how people seem to be talking about implementing it in practice and whether the sort of confidentiality, integrity versus availability trade-off that's being made there, because it does potentially weaken a lot of the guarantees around confidentiality and integrity of that data on chain to increase the availability guarantee. If those are the right trade-offs, I think that's more of a social question, and I think that's maybe highly mediated by, do you actually have functional, trustworthy bureaucracies where you live? I don't even want to say governments. Like, is the bureaucracy functional and trustworthy? And then I think the other thing is it does seem like the universe around tooling has changed a huge amount, and it kind of makes me want to revisit some of the things we looked at, a year ago, 2 years ago. I forget how far back that was, because it feels like things might be a lot more usable for an organization at our level now. And I'd be curious if that feeling is actually borne out. Those were just my thoughts from the thing, and I will not speak anymore, and I will pass it on to Satya.
Yeah. I was the company I work for. Everybody went to Devconnect. I was not able to go because I just became a U.S. citizen and I don't have a passport, so couldn't travel. Maybe next time there'll be a network state that I can get a passport of. But I did watch some of the Zero X Spark demos, and those looked really interesting. The ones with some of the games that use ZK proofs. I thought that was interesting, and I think also in account abstraction, the delegatable capabilities looked interesting, where basically if you are able to pay the gas fees on behalf of another account or wallet, and I think both like autonomous worlds and account abstraction, it'd be interesting to see how like they affect how DAOs operate, or like generally how decentralized orgs seem to operate, which is that right now it seems that most of the decentralized orgs seem very slow compared to the rest of the world, because it's a lot of like discussing proposals and it just a lot of grunt work, and it seems to move at a slower pace than like the rest of the, like, for example, everything, like even take like the case of OpenAI, like all that happened within like a 4 or 5 day span. And if you're running a DAO where everything has to be run through proposals and people have to like discuss and do like grunt work, it's never going to be fast, and sort of maybe makes it slightly irrelevant. So I'm curious to see how much of like those things will be more automatable. Like for example, like if you it's like set rules, such as if you voted on yes on a particular proposal, then vote yes on all future proposals, things like that. So that's what I'd be interested in seeing. Yeah, those are just my thoughts.
Yeah, I can quickly respond to some of the points that came up. The Grand Bazaar, Anuraj and I spent a whole day doing tourism, and we went to the three bazaars there. There's Grand Bazaar, Spice Bazaar, and a third one. I've forgotten the name now. But the guide took us to the third bazaar, and he told
It's
us that the
Arasta Bazaar.
Rasta Bazaar, yeah, and he told us that Grand Bazaar is too big and touristy and full of scammers, so you shouldn't go there. You have anything to add on that, Anuraj?
Uh, yeah, so like the guide was really good. So he took us through the entire history of the European side and then to the. So we did a tour which we walked from the European side and then took a boat to the Asian side and went to the market. So he went around and talked about a lot about the history. So even if you are like not going to this some event, the city itself is worth visiting, I think. And then I think also we also went to Hagia Sophia and he took us inside. So yeah, it was nice. But the event itself, even though it was developer heavy, there were enough meta people there that you would have always something to do. So even if you're not developing something, like Devconnect, I think is like a good event to attend.
Yeah, I think Istanbul would be a good source material for something on the governance chat track one day. So it's not just the Grand Bazaar. The entire city is like very rich with lessons on governance, because like Nathan and Jenna were asking about like what's it like to be in a surveillance state. I mean, this was the city that pretty much invented it. Like the term Byzantine bureaucracy comes from Byzantium or Constantinople or what is now Istanbul. The idea of a deep state comes from the city. I mean, the whole crypto space is named for Byzantine consensus, which is inspired by the idea of Byzantine generals sieging the city. And the effect of all this on the city, in my sort of very shallow 1 week long sense of it, is historically for 2000 years, it's always been at the forefront of like autocratic, dictatorial, technology maxing sort of like state apparatus. So today it's like surveillance cameras and phone tapping and whatever. But I'm sure like even 2000 years ago, when the Roman capital was moved there, I'm reading a book about that. It's called A Tale of Three Cities, really good. But even then, it would have been at the forefront of like spy versus spy, various kinds of surveillance, secret shenanigans going on, powerful bureaucracies. All that stuff is not new. It's not Erdogan or modern Turkey that invented it. They kind of just inherited the tradition of this being like almost the best city in the world for that kind of stuff. And my sense is the local culture has formed an adaptive response to that kind of like government history. Like the government has always been intrusive, autocratic, and surveillance happy. But the citizens, I suspect, have always been equally good at like hiding from the state. So it's like, a city of like hidden passages and tunnels, and that's the vibe I got. It's not like I got introduced to some secret society underground. But yeah, there's like apparently the guide told us that there's a whole tour that's entirely about the underground parts of Istanbul. So there's like whole underground networks of stuff, I assume. So you can imagine why, like 2000 years of like warfare between civilizations and like oppressed minorities trying to hide from people trying to oppress them. So it's kind of like, so I wouldn't say it's like an experience of a modern surveillance state. It's an experience of a really old and stable equilibrium between forces of state surveillance and forces of like reaction and hiding from surveillance. So that what was that reading we did from James Scott in Governance Chat about Lomia and the art of not being governed. So I think Istanbul is probably an example of a state that's simultaneously extraordinarily good at governing. That's why it's persisted for so long, but also simultaneously really good at not being governed. So I think both happen. So it'll be kind of interesting to maybe pick a couple of readings that reveal that. Oh, and a related thing to that is the city is overrun with cats that are all over the place. So it's like the most cat-heavy city in the world. And I think the cats have been there like since ancient Greek times, Roman era, or whatever. Kind of tells you something that culture that's like so full of like powerful dictator types somehow has managed to find a love of cats and lets them run around, there's something there. There's like a psychology of the city revealed in its love of animals. Like the guide was pointing out like how many of the mosques have like little water feeders for birds as well. There's also many dogs, but the dog population is more controlled because they apparently turn into like packs of wolf-like dangerous animals. But yeah, cats, dogs, birds. So there's something here that you've got autocratic state, citizenry that's used to resisting that autocratic state, and this weird sort of like peripheral zone of I don't know, animals running wild, basically. So there's almost a wilderness periphery within the city. Yeah, so surveillance state, the only experience I had of it was I also took that 1 hour free Wi-Fi at the airport that you have to scan your passport. It gives you a code that you enter in your phone. So clearly they now have my phone SIM card and know to associate it with my passport. I was like, fuck it, that's a reasonable trade-off to make to get my hour of Wi-Fi. That's how I was able to coordinate with Anuraj, and we met up at the airport and shared a taxi. So maybe I'll come to regret that in the future. I don't know, Anuraj, did you see any other signs on surveillance state?
No, actually, I downloaded that eSIM provider directly from Finland, and then I had internet as soon as I landed. So I actually didn't see any surveillance thing at all. Maybe it's because I was in like the co-working space most of the time. So I don't know. Actually, I didn't even notice anything surveillance related.
I don't know. I think that means it's really good. And like, I mean, we were both on Wi-Fi at our hotels and at the conference venue, and I'm sure the Turkish state was like sniffing those networks all the time, because the physical security was truly immense. Like at the conference center, yeah, they had metal detectors everywhere. They had like crowd control flows that were always single point of entry and exit with like one way. So the only way to get anywhere was to go in a single labyrinthine sort of like circuit into a perimeter and out of the perimeter. There was like no way to like easily wander and get lost. You had to go in a straight line from entrance to exit with security at every stage. And this was true at the airport too. There was like 4 layers of checking, and it was like staging you through. So I think in very subtle ways, well, not so subtle, it's there all over the place. But I would say, yeah, it's not that special. Like, it's more in your face. But I would say the US is equally a surveillance state as Turkey. It's just there's a cosmetic layer of like democratic freedom on top, but the technology is obviously much more sophisticated in the US, and it's used more than we think it's used. Maybe Finland is actually genuinely more free. Anyway, we are a few minutes over. Thanks for staying over. And next week, maybe we'll find, one sort of housekeeping thing. I think it would be fun to do, like Nathan suggested, do another round through crypto land and like up our knowledge and sort of hands-on skills. So starting January, if people are interested, we can do a track within this on crypto explorations. Please post in the distributed systems channel the topics you'd like to see covered, and maybe the experimental technologies you'd like us to play with. Because I think 2 years since the last round, a lot has changed, and it'll be interesting. Right. See you guys next week.